Hey, what's a catchword? And further, what's catchwords.com? Stay tuned to find out. Sales Ascender, Chris here. Hey, Spotlight series is all about entrepreneurs that are on the front line. They're solving real problems for real people. And if you want to hear what's working right now in today's market, then you're going to want to keep listening. Today, we're focused on visibility. And there's a couple key components. If we're not doing a couple of the key things we're talking about today, we're missing out on new buyers, new customers, which is why we brought on fellow Sales Ascender, Wanda Toro Turini. Let's go. Wanda, how's it going?
Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful. I love being with you guys all the time.
I don't know how you do it. You always bring the energy. You're always smiling. And I know it's not always easy. So let's start with, we'll get into catchwords.com and rocket fuel, all these fun things. Where did kind of this entrepreneurial journey start? For those that don't know you, where did this all start for you?
Oh, snap. Well, actually, my company turned 16 years old on July 12th. So very soon. 16 years ago. So back then,
there we go.
I was a corporate executive earning a nice amount of money. You know what? I am going to say it, Chris, because I feel like it's important for people to understand. I left a job making $165,000 a year, and my accountant was like, "What is wrong with you? Like, are you sure you want to do this?" And financially, my family struggled, so being financially free and comfortable was really, really important to me. And then I realized, like, shit, I have this money and this big corporate job, but guess what? When hopefully I get to have kids, I'm blessed with children, then I won't be home with them, because I was being groomed to be a higher level executive. And I saw the people that were doing those jobs, and they were traveling the globe all over the place. But in some cases, I also saw the relationship with their children, like when we would have family days and such, and I could see it wasn't the relationship that I wanted to have with my children. So that's actually, oddly enough, 16 years ago, that's what drove me, because I was like, okay, I'm now making a big chunk of the cash. Anybody I dated, I was like making way, way more. And I said, I want to be able to have control of my financial future. Little did I know how much of a...
You know what a great idea for that is? Being an entrepreneur.
No, but you do have control, right? You do have, there's no ceiling, and I get to decide what I want my lifestyle to be and how much time I want to spend with my family and with my children. And that's really important to be able to have that flexibility. So that's what started it. But I worked for the pharmaceutical industry. I had 5 bazillion like innovative ideas. And I was like the annoying person that always had a way of like, oh, but we could do this better. And in big companies, that after a while that gets a little annoying, because they can't just change like this, So I decided that I was going to leave to actually execute some of the ideas that I had for the industry myself. And that's what I did. So I've launched a lot of different solutions, whether it's software solutions or consulting solutions. But my focus had been the healthcare industry for almost like the first 10 to 12 years of my journey.
Got it. So family is the spark that led you to go into this entrepreneurial journey, manage time and money, and relationship with your family a little bit different. So you're in the health industry. What industry did you choose and why?
So now my current focus is small business entrepreneurs. And I'll tell you why, because of this technology that I wound up kind of stumbling on and creating. So I'm going to take you back. So June 2007, I'm in a major pharmaceutical conference, and I have my little 10 by 10 exhibit booth. And this was at McCormick Place in Chicago. So if anybody knows it, it's like a huge like exhibit center. At the end of the conference, they're collecting all of the paper brochures and just paperwork that was not picked up by the attendees in the center. In the center of the exhibit hall. And Chris, it was a human climbable mountain of paper. it was disturbing. And although I am eco aware, I'm not like a super crunchy person. So this was enough to get like a normal
to ruffle
person,
your feathers.
Exactly. A normal person to be like, wow, this is a problem. But when you think about it, we really spend a lot on printing materials. We have no idea whether somebody even picks up our brochure, if people like brochure A or B, like none of that stuff, right? So in 2007, I said, look, this is a problem. It's a problem for the attendees, because how many times have we picked up things that we actually like, we want the information, but it's just so inconvenient, right? So we just chuck it. So that day I named it Eco Files, and it took me 2 years to figure out how are we going to deliver eco-friendly content. And is it an app? Is it a QR code? Is it near field technology? All this stuff back in 2007. We actually purposely landed on texting. So in 2009, we launched a texting app that allowed people to, well, I can't even say it's an app. It's a software, because the app is your texting messenger, right? It's native to your phone. Right. And we decided on it purposely because nobody had to learn something new or download something in order to request this information. You just text the code and bam, the piece of information like winds up in your email. And then guess what? As a marketer, you actually know who requested it, and you could like contact them again. Oh my God. Like, we don't know who picks up our brochure. Yeah. Right. So it seems like 2009, I finally put this together. I launched it, and I was in healthcare and working for big companies as clients. So I go to them, present them this idea, totally psyched. And they're like, wow, this is really cool, but only kids text, like teenagers. So if we're doing a program with teenagers, maybe. And like,
that was the objection you were getting?
Yeah. And I would spend half an hour showing metrics. Like, they would ask me, can you show metrics about how people will text? And I could show that adults were texting because their kids, and grandparents were texting, all this stuff. And then it was still not enough, because the healthcare industry is pretty conservative. They're usually not the first people to do something. So it crushed my soul, because I knew if I went somewhere else, fine, but I knew healthcare and my people weren't biting. And I literally just put it on the shelf. But then I fast forward to 2011, when I was running a consulting firm for the same industry within my company, consulting arm, and I would have to speak in front of an audience. And this one really great conference said, sure, you can speak, but our fee is $10,000. I was like, what you talking about, Willis?
I haven't heard that one for a while. That's good.
And they're like, yeah, you got to pay us $10,000. Well, not like that, but yes, please sponsor us for $10,000. We'd be happy to give you a slot on the stage. And so like, I'm on stage with these humongous companies like Deloitte and Touche, KPMG. They could give two craps about paying $10,000, right? But for me, I was like, shaking, literally, like when I signed that contract, I was sweating. And so I said, I need to make sure that I don't lose out on those anonymous fans. And so like, we all know, Chris, I'm sure, like when you speak in front of a live audience, I'm sure you could visually see the people with the twinkle in their eye. They're like nodding. They're like, yeah, you know. And
every time. Every time, Wanda.
You have the fans. Well, you should if you don't speak in front of live audiences enough.
Encore.
Yes, exactly. But the thing is, like, it happens when you have great content. If you're a dynamic speaker, right? People are there. They're listening and engaged in that very moment. And then we ask them to go somewhere else, to follow us, to email us, to whatever. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to use this. Back then it was called this EcoFiles code, but I'm going to use this code in my presentation to invite people to just text for my slides, because it was very slide heavy. Yeah, it was very slide heavy. And guess what? 25% of my audience texted for my slides.
Boom.
Yeah. And then over 2 years, refine, because strategy is everything. You got to use strategy to wield like technology, the power. And 76% of my audience texted my keyword every single time I spoke. 76%, which meant that I had to speak less. I was out there only doing very targeted appearances. I would roll in like 200 leads per talk. And then my job was to nurture them. And then, by the way, you know, being sales guru, like these people are warmed up because they saw you.
Oh yeah, authority's been set.
Authority's been set. You drop the value bomb, which is what I call what you text now. Boom, right? So now the next step is, it's just so much easier to say, hey, well, now you have an idea of what I do, what I can offer. Let's talk about what you need and how this fits in. They digitally raise their hand by requesting that piece of content. And so but guess what? It's when you're talking in front of an audience, it's not an eco-friendly thing. Like that didn't make sense from a messaging. Right. And so I rebranded it to Catchwords because that's how you catch your anonymous fans in the audience.
I love it. I've always been so curious on, I know we've got to meet and work on business together over these last few months, but I've always been curious. I was like, I wonder what the origin story of Catchwords is. So it's eco-files, which I would also not have guessed.
Yeah.
But I love, again, being a real person solving real problems, in the market on the front line. Like it's never like, you know what? Google sounds like a great Nike is going to go to like when you play with those like Apple, Amazon, they all started in a garage, and so many ideas on a napkin. And it starts with the problem, but it evolves, and then you got to figure out where it fits in different market. It's this whole, like, I don't know. I love those stories. So,
and now I'm still hung on eco-files. Like, I feel like there's no freaking reason why we should go to a conference and pick up a freaking brochure. Like, that's my mission, but that's another thing. Like, it's got to kind of have different messaging and stuff like that, but the technology enables so many things. But I'm about catching right now.
There's a really great comedian. He's no longer with us. His name's Mitch Hedberg, and he talks about like having like flyers and he's so good. It's like, you know what a flyer says? It's like, here, you throw this away.
Exactly. Oh, I have to find a video of him saying that. I love Mitch anyway. Like, I wish I was able to see him live. But yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. But I want to also just get to like why I started focusing on small businesses, because obviously the concept of catching, it works for big businesses. When you think, like, I experimented in a live audience, but it works for any audience because it's really there's a behavioral law that says the longer we wait to do something, the lower the probability it is that we're going to do it. And it's called the law of diminishing intent, right? But it's kryptonite for marketing, because whether it's a TV ad, a radio interview, a podcast interview, a speaking engagement, whenever we ask somebody to follow up, the call to action is, oh, do this later. It's like, boo, and they just don't do it. So the immediacy of a text call to action is really valuable. So inherently the technology is awesome, but there's a nuance to it. Like, texting is very personal, so people have to feel okay, and they have to feel like they trust texting you because they know that there's going to be a communication, right? So what you say, how you present it, what you're offering is really, really critical. And I had some corporations say, okay, we'll use your tech. They didn't take our strategy advice, and then 0% of chiropractors would text. And they would say, well, chiropractors don't text. And I'm like, no, you're just offering them something.
Everybody texts.
So it became frustrating. And then I thought back at my 76% response rate, and when I got to consistently doing that. And I said, okay, Wanda, think back. What did this mean to you? And I'm going to get emotional for a second. Sorry. But so when I was able to get 76% of my audience texting every single time, one, I wasn't out there traveling, speaking as much anymore. Right. I was able to grow my business to $4.2 million with very focused effort. Right.
Wow.
So $4.2 million in revenue. What that meant was I finally freaking got to my 6-figure salary, by the way. Right? I had a team of 13 people, blah, 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 all this stuff. But most important to me is that I didn't get married until I was 40. And I was having problems having children.
Mm.
And I was able to take extra money. I invested over $100,000 in my fertility journey.
Wow.
And today I'm 49. Actually, next week I'll be 50 years old.
What?
And
like, man, I hope I have as much energy as you do at 50.
yeah. But even crazier, I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, Chris.
Wow.
Yeah.
A
and
1-year-old.
A freaking 1-year-old. And oh my gosh, he climbs on everything.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons I started to become an entrepreneur was because I wanted to be able to spend time with my children. And it was heartbreaking that I would never have my children to spend time with after being so career driven and oriented and it taking such a long time to meet my perfect match. Right. So that's really what 76% response rate meant to me. Like growing my business efficiently meant I was able to build my family and now like it just completely transform my life, make choices. My husband came to work with me. So now we'll go to Italy for 6 weeks and work from there if we want, like all of these things. So when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, I love helping the healthcare industry use my technology to reach patients better and healthcare professionals. That jazzes me up. But what it can do to a small business to be able to efficiently generate money, and especially those people that are service driven and impact driven, right? To be able to see that every time you choose visibility, you're actually impacting an audience and you're connecting with them. Like that's super, super valuable. That's like great, like personal return and financial return in that. And so that's why I said, you know what, I'm going to hold off on, it's kind of silly, on the cash cow of the corporate world, because it's really satisfying to serve small businesses and to transform them in that way.
That's so huge, Wanda. What a powerful story. It's so cool to get to hear more of the deeper layers of your journey. And there's one really key part of the story that we haven't talked about yet. When you finally got the 76% rate and all this is taking place, what did your accountant say?
I didn't have that accountant anymore.
Oh,
I was like, well, bye. That's
fed that accountant to the birds.
Yes.
All right, on to the next one. That's awesome. Okay. Well,
that's a good one.
I love it.
But you know what? Because you don't want to keep people with bad vibes around you. Right. I'm thinking like, dude, you're an entrepreneur. You should be like, yeah, and clearly his entrepreneurial journey wasn't really positive. Right. He wasn't looking at his choice to be an entrepreneur as like freedom. So to me, being an entrepreneur, you have the ability to create freedom. Now, sometimes we do create our own prisons. Right. But guess what? When we friggin' figure it out, we're like, holy shit, who's responsible for that? Right. And I can change it. Right. So there is freedom in that, and recognizing that if you went astray, that you have the ability to change that. So yeah, my message was, I wish him great luck. I don't know what's up with him now, but I do have a different accounting partner now. Who's much more supportive. And he calls me crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I am crazy. That's who.
Yes. I love it. So let's you having a heart for SMB, small and mid-sized business. What are some applications that you're seeing in the market that are just working really well right now? Yeah.
So clearly speaking is still the thing, but guess what? COVID kicked us in the gut.
That was a thing.
Yeah, that was a thing. Especially when I was launching a big ad campaign in March of 2020 that was totally focused on speaking in front of live audiences.
You're like, dang it.
Like literally, Chris, the ads stopped, and I called Facebook. I'm like, what's going on? Like what happened? Because it was like to all this activity and then nothing. And that was like the lockdown announcement. And then that's when we really started, well, after I had my child mid-COVID, but that's when we realized, but hey, it's about optimizing every appearance So TV, radio, podcast, in all of these scenarios, we get people jazzed up, like the right people, your people that are listening to you, right? They're like, oh, I need to listen to Chris, right? I need to follow up. I need to figure out who this Chris guy is and what he does and whatever, because you intrigued them in the interview.
Yeah.
But then it requires work. And then the kryptonite comes in, the law of diminishing intent, right? So what we do is we help people actually figure out what is it that they're going to offer their audience in any appearance, whether it's a speaking, obviously digital or physical, or an interview, right? What are you going to offer your audience? And then the strategy is, what is your part one, which is the arc and the objective of your interview that leads to part two, right? So in my case, I will say my arc one, I talk about the tech and stuff, but I repeat strategy a lot. Like I'm kind of like peek behind the curtain, right? So I talk about strategy. Strategy got me from 25% to 76%, right? And so what I like to offer people in the interview is say, hey, you can transform your talk into a lead gen machine. Start with strategy, right? And I created this guide on how to transform your talk into a lead gen machine. And it's like the top line, my favorite strategies on what I changed that actually changed the 25 to the 76, because the technology was my meter, right? But the strategy was critical. So I asked people, I said, hey, if you're interested, if this resonates with you, then you could text leads, LEADS, to 411321. And that's within the US. So LEADS is the message. 411321 is the phone number, right? And if you're international, the phone number would be +1 909 741. Oh, I think I messed up on that. 741 1321. Right. And you just text leads as the message. If you've never used our service before, obviously we'll ask for your email address, and then voila, you get a text, you get an email and an attachment. The way we do it is really cool too, Chris, because there is some magic with the technology. We uniquely offer an email response with an attachment, which isn't typical in email marketing. Right. We've been able to figure out how to get pretty damn good delivery rates, because that's one of the main reasons why PDFs aren't added, because people don't open them. Firewalls, will block them and stuff like that, right? But but our average open rate on an initial campaign is 150%.
Wait, how is 150? Yeah, no, so I'm no mathematician here, but
no, because I looked at it. I'm a nerd. I was like, guys, this is wrong. What are you talking about? But what it is that on average, your subscriber will open it up 1.5 times.
Got it.
So what that means, and it makes sense, right? So they text, they're at the event or listening to your podcast, and they text, and we pay a lot of attention on, well, what's the messaging? When they open up the email, what does it look like? What's the messaging that pops out? When they open up the PDF, how is it designed so they understand what the value is? Because if you've convinced them there, then that's when they go back to their computer and they actually will open it and read it.
Okay, we got to unpack this a little bit, because there's a lot. There's a lot here. There's a lot here.
Yeah.
So I'm loving it. So this is the real stuff, and like you're running campaigns.
Journey. Yep.
I'm gonna grill down and ask the questions that we all want to know. So number one, open rate is something you mentioned. That's a huge deal. Emails, if you nail it, you're playing in 10-20%. And sure, there might be the outliers that are like, oh, Chris, well, on my list, I get 60%. It's warm. That's awesome. Congrats. Like, keep it going. I'm not saying don't do. I do all things that bring you new customers. Like, just it's an and. Like, I'm an and thinker.
Me too.
At the same time, as we're having this conversation about communication channels. And in this specific one, looking at comparing it to others, open rates are insane. Not only once, but more than once, statistically.
Yes.
So I just wanted to highlight that part, because that's a really, really big part. Secondly,
this is
jump in.
I was going to say, this is a low frequency, high impact approach. Email campaigning is high frequency, low impact.
Yeah.
Because you're annoying the hell out of people. That's why people don't open up. And
hey, plus, it's me. Hey, I exist. Hey, you want to have a conversation?
Yeah.
Hey, remember?
Yeah.
Totally,
So
totally.
sorry.
So sorry, I didn't mean to wreck your flow there, or
No,
my flow, or your
no.
flow. We're just gonna keep flowing. So the open rate's huge, but click through, CTR, click through, like, I mean, I'm responding and interacting. That is through the roof with SMS or text messaging compared to email as well. In fact, it's like in some studies that I've seen, it's 20 to 25% higher.
Yeah.
It's I don't know the campaigns that you're running specifically, but it's really powerful. It's part of the reason I really wanted people to hear from you today. Is you're running these campaigns, and this is if you don't have this going on, I know it's like really common in e-com and different industries, but it's so powerful. For example, that
Uh-huh.
you shared, one other thing I want to impact, I'm going to kick it back to you in a second, is this. When we're doing this type of talk, you're like, text leads to this number. You're on podcasts. This still happens digitally, and sometimes there's a lot of your buyers, your prospects, that prefer to communicate this way. They'll open up their text, but they won't remember to go to a site, opt into a thing, and then get an email, and then take action. Anytime you can have less friction, you win.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime that you can just drop major value and have somebody realize, like, okay, well, if Chris is responding to me, like, this is something valuable because he didn't just message me 20 times in the past, like, 2 weeks, right? So this is like few and far between. You're respecting that. And like whenever, so our clients, not only when somebody texts the initial catchword, obviously you get the delivery of the text, the email, which is nicely designed. It's an HTML email plus plus an attachment, right? Then you have the opportunity to reconnect with them, right, to serve them more. So we call those follow-up broadcasts, right? So there are two ways you can do a follow-up. You can have a sequential, which means you could say 7 days after they text, then we want to send this PDF, and then 2 weeks later we want to send this other PDF, right? You could do that, and every time we send the PDF, we send a text. I call it a tickler text, saying, hey, check your email for my other guide on, or part 3 of my series, or whatever, right? Then, so those on average are, the open rates are like 97%, right? Which they need to be better. But anyway, but it's pretty damn good. Right. And I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. It makes me sick just to say it. No, just kidding. But that's a pretty damn good open rate along the sequence. And then you could do one-time broadcasts, which are like, okay, on June 1st, I'm at 12 noon, Eastern or whatever, I'm going to send out a broadcast to everybody in my subscriber list. So that could be like before an event or whatever. But our focus, what I do want to mention, is texting has been around for a very long time, right? So it's not just about texting. I want people to recognize that there are different applications that utilize the texting capability in different ways. It's like text to donate, text to vote. There's texting to texting that retail does all the time, like for a little coupon code and stuff like that. What's different is we focus on people that want to deliver value and extend the value and the impact of their appearance. And so once you're bought into that, then you'll understand that we're not about texting like every time you have like open enrollment for something, because our pushback will be, well, what PDF are you going to offer them? Like, what piece of valuable content are you going to offer? Because that's what gets you the open rates, not your announcement of XYZ, right?
I think that's a really important distinction there. Text, SMS is a really effective because of there's so much attention on it. People spend they spend over 5 hours minimum a day looking at just social media in general, that alone their phone. But engaging, responding, that comes down to quality of content. That comes down to how, who you're reaching out to and how you're getting in front of the right person, which I think is a really important distinction you're making.
Yeah, and I see people utilize other texting technology, like I don't do what Community does, right? Like Community is another texting app. And
can we hang there for a second?
Yeah,
because I didn't want to like mention that name because I was like, is this a competitor? And I'm not trying to hide. But here you said it first, so it's fair game. So here's where we hang out. Two things. Number one. Trends. I'm curious, and anyone listening, watching to this, respond. Let us know. Are you currently on any SMS like marketing threads? Are you on any threads? I'm a part of at least 4 or 5. And I think all but one of them are community.
I know, right? Community is awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's you want me to explain
yeah, sorry, I think there's a little delay. Yeah, please enlighten us.
Alrighty. So community is your opportunity to actually have either one-way conversation, right? You could text one thing to a large group of people, or they have the opportunity to text back to you, and you can respond to the entire group or respond one-on-one, right? So it's because texting is so intimate, it's kind of cool to be able to say, hey, I could text so-and-so, expert and have access to them, right? And for you to be able to get into their, texting messaging. But the thing is strategy. So I have to say, I have seen it by people that I love dearly and follow. Shitty, it's like shitty execution of it, because if people text you, like if you're giving them the opportunity to text you one-on-one, you better have somebody there that's actually like responding to them. So in so many of these, I'm like, let me see if I'm not going to name names, but let me see if so-and-so will respond to me, right? So it's kind of like, why open it up and say, hey, I'm going to open it up a community so we can talk back to back, back and forth, when really it's only for you to talk at me. And that is where you have people unsubscribe.
Got it.
Right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
So I say, hey, if you're going to do it, I think it's actually a great way for a small group if you are really open to the back and forth communication and you're prepared, you have a VA, you have a plan, remember strategy, you have a plan on how to approach it, then I think it's great, because then you're not going to piss people off, right? Yeah. But if you're only thinking like, wow, it would be great for me to have text access to people's phones, like it's not going to work for you, because already your intention is off, right? So that's why with this, I say, and by the way, I'm actually about to sign up for a community number, right? I'm going to use it for a small group of people that I know I'm actually going to communicate back and forth, because I know Facebook Messenger messages get lost and such, right? So for example, members of my group, then I could have access to, because wouldn't we want access to, wouldn't we want them to listen to or to watch our messages and respond?
Well, here's the ultimate punchline, or at least one of them for entrepreneurs. One of the big assets that you're building is your list. And so that's why email is still great. And it's like, build your email list. Some people, there's still a ton of people communicating that way. Even if they never open it, but your email pops in and it's top of mind, and it's part of the exercise of it. But like you're mentioning, the space we're talking about is having way higher open rates and engagement rates with SMS, and that's also a list. That's a huge growing asset. The ability to and the bigger that grows, the longer you go down this path with that, the more valuable it becomes. It becomes easier and easier to do launches and get your message out there. Your new books coming out, your new program, your summit, challenges, whatever the thing is, becomes easier to communicate with more people faster.
Yeah, and so what we do is we're kind of like the gatekeepers for our clients to say, whoa, are you doing something that's self-serving? Or how is it going to serve your audience? You want somebody that receives your text through Ketch to say, thank you. I'm glad that you let me know about that. That's the goal every single time. And so I help with that litmus test. It's like, okay, so we're going to talk about we're going to sneak in the email. Hey, by the way, join our event. But how are you going to wrap the bacon around that broccoli, right? Right, put the bacon around the Brussels sprouts, right? So like you need to think about that, and that's what we work on. Now, I will say that our unsubscribe rate across all of our clients is less than 2%. Less than 2%.
Wow.
And the reason that is because we make sure that you don't F up, right? We don't we're just like, no. That's not going to be sent out. Now, the other thing that's also very different is very soon we will be one of the only shared short codes that have multiple clients on them, because of our compliance mechanism, right? So what happens is in other things where like your keyword is on the same number as other people, right?
Got it.
If somebody else messes up, then they could shut the whole number down, and guess what? You just lost your ability.
That's a problem.
Yeah. So for us, and this kind of comes back from the fact that I worked for the pharmaceutical industry, which is highly regulated, right? So I had to build a system and a software that was very, very compliant, and that would totally like reduce the probability of any of those issues happening. But what happens is it actually winds up being really good for entrepreneurs, because we protect them from doing something that's going to mess up that really valuable asset, right? And because also like we don't want to mess it up for other people, right? But it's easy for us because we live by those rules all the time. But for an entrepreneur to engage in this world and not recognize that that there are rules to play by, it's different, because we're used to spamming people, unfortunately, on email. But guess what? Texting isn't like that. Like literally AT&T could be like, this number, no.
Right.
And
right.
Done. And done. Yeah. So yeah, it's just a very interesting process. And you know, my message is that it's important to work with an expert. If you really think that hopefully, if you are convinced that this is an application that is valuable for you, if you are committed to showing up, like you're visible, you're speaking already, you're already doing podcast interviews, TV interviews, like you are losing out on anonymous fans. There's no question on it. I feel very strongly, whether it's with me or with somebody else, fix it, right? But from our perspective, it's like, okay, we'll work with you on the strategy so that you can genuinely like offer something, you feel good about it, your audience feels good about receiving it, they're thankful, right? And that really gets you off to a pretty damn good start.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all those things. And yeah, like you said, anyone listening to this conversation, they're leaning into, hey, I haven't been leveraging SMS, I haven't been leveraging text in my presentations. Have a call to action. If you don't have more business and you're not asking for it, that's why you got to ask for it. And maybe it's, Chris, I'm not ready for the ask. It's too soon for the sale. Totally understand. Don't rush it. But do have a call to action, and SMS is a great way to put that in place. You can say, hey, here's a safe place for us to continue building know, like, and trust, continue building our relationship. Let me continue to serve you and add value. And then when the time is right, you guys, you can then they can become your customer. So I like to call that all the natural buying experience. And it's the same flow. It's very heavy on Eugene Schwartz's 5 levels of awareness. If you guys haven't heard all that, then reach out to us, because there's some really good stuff there. So where's the best place? I know catchwords.com is that's what we're talking about today. Where else is the best place to get in contact? I will actually say, to follow my mechanism is to also just to share the catchword again, to text leads to 411-321. Not only will you receive some of these strategies, so you could just start thinking about what you're doing tomorrow if you have something, right? But secondly, I have offered the opportunity for you to actually just get on my calendar if you want to talk about like, okay, this is kind of what I have coming up. What do you think the strategy, the approach should be? Because there are different ways that we can support people. We can also support people that are on the verge of wanting to be visible, but because they don't have good strategy, they haven't really been doing it a lot, right? So many of us kind of think like, oh yeah, I'll speak to your group, that'll be fun. And we do charity talks. That's awesome. And it feels good, right? And because we're service-minded, impact-driven, it feels good. But the other analogy is we're a one-night stand. Because it's like, it feels all good. One night stand charity talk? Is that what I heard? Yeah, one night stand charity. Feels different when you put it together. but you know what I mean? It's like, there's nothing afterwards. And what happens is when we have a lot of these charity talks or one night stands, we don't want to keep doing it because it feels icky
after a while, you're like, okay, well, I gave it, and like, right? So, so it doesn't have to feel icky. You could actually be extremely, giving in your appearance and in your talk, and actually give more by having a catchword, but also receive those leads so that when you are ready to follow up, to nurture all that stuff, you could do that. So like I have a program called Rocket Fuel, because I believe visibility is really rocket fuel for your business. When you stop hiding and working on your business, right? And you actually show up as the authority and the head of your business, then that's could really be rocket fuel. And a lot of times people don't show up because they haven't been able to prove that speaking is worth it. And so the catchword is kind of, that's the metric, that's the low jack on your talk, right? So you can follow and be like, yeah, that was good, that one sucked, right? But the strategy will help you actually ensure that every appearance is going to be optimized. And I'm a super nerd when it comes to that. I like optimizing.
Optimizer, you're the optimizer.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Hey, Wanda, thank you so much for coming out and sharing with amongst fellow sales ascenders today. And SMS, this is a big communication platform that if it's not in your business, it's something you should heavily consider today. So I appreciate Wanda coming out and spending time with us.
Thank you. And you guys are amazing. You're also rocket fuel. So I just appreciate having you guys in my life and my business. And thank you for the opportunity to share the story.
Right on. All right. Well, we'll have to have you back out sometime soon. Sales Ascender, thank you also for watching, tuning into the Spotlight series. We're going to be back next week with more content amongst other fellow sales ascenders. There's so much talent in this community. There's real people solving real problems that are open to share and connect on what is working right now today in the market. And you need to hear it so you can go further, farther, and faster. All right. You guys have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.